Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our practice edition where we try to give a view behind the curtain of small businesses on a lean journey, talking about the improvements we've made this week, so people can kind of see the nuts and bolts of the process and not just the shiny finished result of a company who's gone lean.
Yeah, and not just grand theory, but like what are we actually doing? We can talk about grand theory
that's our Wednesday episode
till the cows come home, but you have to back it up somehow.
Yeah, and kind of see where the rubber meets the road and how all that goes. So,
yeah.
Got a quote?
Yes. People are rewarded for fixing problems, for firefighting, not for analyzing. From Toyota Coda.
Yes.
Key. Mic drop, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's always interesting to look at like what are the incentives built into a system and what are the things. We talked about this a little while ago. Like people often understand what you value by what you talk about and what you spend time on and what you sort of reward. Mm-hmm. And I think if you get in a jam as an organization and someone is able to like figure out a quick solution, then everyone's like, wow, like good work, nice job.
Yeah. Whereas
the person who sat for whatever 3 days in a dark office, I don't know why their office is dark, but and came up with like a way that just makes everything run a little smoother.
Yeah.
And they get no recognition. You know, that tells you something. And I think most organizations focus more energy on sort of who's good at putting out fires rather than who's good at making sure fires don't happen to begin with.
Yeah, it's kind of that classic thing of like when things are running smooth, nobody really pays any attention and nothing rises to the surface as being exceptional. Right? It's just easy.
Yeah.
And when things are, So when things are smooth, everybody's like, oh, that's cool. You want to get some coffee?
Right.
You know, and when there's when things fall apart and somebody gets to be the hero, there's a lot of focus put on that person.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful. Right. I mean, it is helpful.
Organizationally, you're incentivizing a really bad, undesirable kind of.
Really. Yeah. We need to change focus to when things are going well to really note it.
Yeah, like imagine if instead of like at a morning meeting, it was like, oh, this department had this big problem and, you know, stand up whoever, you really pulled it together and got it across the finish line.
Yeah.
And instead of that, it would be like, oh, hey, this department hasn't had an issue in 3 weeks and just delivers on time. Like, you know, huge.
Stand up.
Stand up, right? Like that's where the focus should be.
Yeah.
And I would also say on like the analysis side, like the A3, I think it's notable looking at A3 and doing it, how that 60% of that process is missing from most organizations. Mm-hmm. Just period, full stop.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this is, it's just striking.
I was kind of thinking about this morning. Things are really busy right now and we're trying to get prepared to move our shop. So it's like
really, really busy.
It's really busy. It feels a little on the frantic side.
Mm-hmm.
And I was drinking tea this morning, kind of organizing myself and thinking like I should really, give the crew a bonus after we get through this. And then I was like, but I don't want to tie it to the fact, like I don't want them to feel like
we have to work hard to
they only get a bonus if we like crush in exceptional circumstances and run around with our hair on fire. Like really, I want to give them a bonus for the fact that like they've been doing a stellar job, like taking on more of the process for the last 4 months. And so it's hard to figure out that timing. Maybe I just say it. I'm like, I don't expect you guys to work like this all the time. And this is not for what we're doing right now. This is for the past 4 months. So maybe I just need to write a note.
Or maybe you just do it before, like now, instead of after it's done.
Yeah.
My feeling is actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
I feel like if you give it after a period of running around with your hair on fire.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair though, like, well, yeah, that's a good point. You are rewarding that.
Mm-hmm.
It is also, I don't know how to balance that with like, they are like, it is a bummer where that is your work environment. And so it is nice to just be like.
Really, I guess it should be both.
Yeah, it's like, hey, thank you.
Yeah.
And here's something instead of just thank you.
Like double bonuses, like bonus now for the last 4 months, and then bonus after this chaotic period for putting up with it.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, interesting. Some improvements.
Yeah.
I have 2 little ones that we made to the podcast last week. 2 updates to our template. One was rearranging the layout of the spreadsheet where we type our episode notes, and that gives more space to our actual notes that we're using to record the episode.
Yeah, we were doing a lot of scroll up, scroll down.
Yeah, because the header was taking up so much space with the like episode title, episode, show notes, all this other stuff, and really we only reference that at the end of the episode, and so there was no need to have it take up space. In saying that, actually, why is it the header instead of below? Yeah,
I think it's at the header because maybe you can lock a row below.
I'm not sure, but do we need it locked, or could we just scroll down, fill it out?
Good question. Yeah.
Anyway, so that was our improvement. And talking about it because like these things, it's very easy for these things to never happen. Especially, it's funny. Like I feel like both of us, this is sort of a side project, this podcast.
100%.
Right. And our main business is our main project. And so it's easy to not sort of give it the same attention and like, okay, we're going to stay an extra 5-10 minutes to make these changes so that we start to save minutes and make it easier for us to execute moving forward, which would be sort of hypocritical to not do that. So that's why we're sort of mentioning it on the podcast, how we're improving the podcast. We also updated the show notes template for our practice edition this episode to be more just to be able to just copy and paste the improvements from where we filled them out for the week just right into the show notes, just to save us a little bit of time. And I don't know about everyone, but like I don't look at show notes typically unless there's something that I really want to reference. So I'm not sure. Maybe we should just eliminate the show notes. I don't really know.
They should just,
why improve it when you can eliminate
the podcast?
Yeah. Go ahead and click play.
I do read show notes, maybe not as much as the title. If a title intrigues me, but I'm not quite sure, I'll read the show notes. Really? Yeah.
Maybe I need to start doing that more. I normally click play and see what it's about because normally there's an intro.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are the 2 updates to the podcast.
Right on. My first one, we didn't do a whole lot this last week because trying to move. We're trying to dedicate at least 1 day a week for the next 4 weeks to getting the new shop space up and running.
Smart.
It will probably end up being more than 1 day a week for at least one person, but last week all 3 of us went over. I guess it was only half a day. All 3 of us went over for half a day, and we actually got quite a lot done, which was cool.
Nice.
This space was in rough shape. I think we might be the first ones to have cleaned certain areas. And it's a 20-year-old building.
Interesting.
Anyway, first, I think maybe I was talking about this last week, but hadn't finished. Updated our second S700 speedio with the V3 probing routines and got G54.2 running. What that means to people who don't run CNC machines is basically trying to standardize our workflow across multiple machines to be more updated with where we want our standard workflow to end up. And part of that was documenting the process of changing probing routines, like all of the little, it's not a ton of things, but you have to, it's not so straightforward as just load and go.
Interesting.
You have to make sure that a bunch of values are set correctly in one of the probing routine subprograms.
Gotcha.
And
are those like feed rates and stuff?
No, they're like stylus ball diameter, like intrometric. If you're using the whole G54.2 thing, you have to fill out like how many axes you're writing to and which axes they are.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to think of what else is in there. Yeah. It's critical stuff. If you weren't aware of it, like it just would not work or it might crash something.
So So you have that documented anywhere, or how you?
Yeah, so I tried to document it this
Very
time.
cool.
Because the first time on the first machine, I just did it.
Right.
And I was like, I'll do the other one tomorrow. And then that was like 2 months ago or something. Trying to think of like kind of what the underlying theme is here. I think it's just standardizing workflows, basically.
I think it's standardizing workflows. I think it's also the fact that there are real hurdles to making substantial improvements in your technology.
Yeah.
And like there's such inertia to like, we're doing it this way now and it does work mostly, and so we're just going to keep doing that because the time required and the risk involved in updates are real. And I think this is like part of why you sort of have like this snowball effect with lean companies, is that once you start building that time in, you just start like checking things off the list of like, oh yeah, now we don't do hand edits to our code every time we post new code to the machines. Now we can do all this probing, and like it's just like it's a lot of work. Like it's a lot of work. It's a full added project. To an already hard thing of running a business. And so a lot of companies, like, you don't find time, you make time kind of thing. Like, when people say, we'll find the time to make this improvement, it's like, you won't. You won't. I don't know. I think about that with our sewing machine fixtures, is like we spent, 2 years sewing the way most of the world sews. And finally we were like, we're just going to chip away at this till this is across the line. And it's been huge.
Nice.
Back
and forth.
Make the time to, I don't know, dig into those hard projects, I guess. So we did, on the topic of sewing machines, we printed second fixtures, a second set of jigs for the sewing machine. So now while one is running, you can load the other one. Also built in redundancy. So that's helpful. I don't know, small improvement, saves a little bit of time and reduces risk on the, if something breaks. I don't know, pretty simple,
but critical.
I guess that one is sort of like reducing waiting, I would say, on both fronts, right? Waiting for one jig to be done so you can load it, or waiting for someone to make a new jig or the 3D printer if one breaks.
I also think like, thinking way down in your workflow, like if you got to the point where assembly and sewing was two different people, and someone could be preloading fixtures and the other person could just be, and you sped your sewing machine back up and all that kind of stuff, like the potential for throughput there is massive.
That's part of the reason a number of people on Instagram have like left us comments about like, you have a CNC mill, why don't you use it to make these fixtures? Because most in the industry, most of them are metal, and we're doing 3D printed. Two really nice upsides. One, and the reason we did it, is the cost of fixtures professionally made is like between like $500 and $5,000 depending on the features. Which isn't crazy. Like that's what I would charge. If I was making them one off in metal. But one of the things we thought through is exactly what you're bringing up. Is like, we're not trying to make 3 of these. We're trying to make like, one for each product, or one design for each product. So now each product requires that. B, ideally we have a whole bunch that we can preload, and then the sewing machine kind of handles the rest. And so that would just be hugely expensive.
Love it.
Oh, and the second nice thing about 3D printed that I didn't foresee, happy accident, is I ran the wrong program on one of the fixtures, and so it just sewed straight through the fixture. And it's plastic, and so nothing broke. The sewing machine didn't even notice. Just cut the threads and was back on. Where if it was in metal and you ran the wrong one, you might break something. I mean, you definitely would break something. Hopefully it's just the needle, which it probably would be.
Nice. On the subject of tumblers, Uriel added a log at the tumblers to track part name and quantity in each load, because we don't run the same part every day and they don't come in unique batches off of the machine. There can be a lot of potential confusion of like,
I know exactly what you're talking about. It says in your notes, so we don't spend time fishing around. I fish.
So it's like, okay, 30 went in, count as you pull them out. 30 are out, on to the next.
That's
versus
so
being
smart.
like, what is in here? This was totally independent of me. I just saw her writing on this thing and I was like, what is that? And I walked over. She was like, well, it's this, it's like, I'm like, that is fantastic. Like, amazing. You just did that.
That's super smart.
And I think we're going to, when we move to the new shop, probably have a whiteboard or something. She just like take an extra thermal printer labels and just like magnet them to the wall and just
Gotcha.
writing on them for now as, temporary paper.
That seems effective.
Yeah, especially because there's multiple people tending that. And it's the question. The question remains: why are we tumbling? Some of our customers want a tumbled finish, so that's a good reason. That's the primary reason why we tumble.
Okay.
Sometimes it is lazy machining or parts that have features that would be very difficult to deburr with our current tooling and machines and stuff. I don't see tumbling going away for our shop, so I would like to optimize it.
I don't like this logic, but I'll say it anyway. There's a reason they exist.
There is, yeah.
Right, they do serve a function.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very cool idea. For small parts, you could also do it by weight. Our parts are so small, it's kind of easier to do everything by weight.
Yeah.
They are coming out wet, so that might really mess you up.
Yeah.
But they go in wet too often. I don't know. Anyway. Did a lot more research on Coda. And my buddy Kyle helped me build out sort of a prototype of what we're imagining, and it was super helpful. He spends, I don't know, all day, every day, basically for the last 6 months working in Coda. So it's just like a very different speed to me, like Googling different functionalities, right? He's like, oh yeah, I could build this 3 different ways. Here's one.
Yeah.
And kind of my reason, the reason it was so helpful is because I'm kind of just still trying to de-risk the concept. When you like dive into a new piece of software, I feel like you had this with Airtable, you mentioned, where like you invested all this time in it and then it turned out it couldn't really schedule in the way you wanted. Yeah. But it's like you're kind of in it already. And so it's like, well, that just sucks and we're in it. And not saying it was a bad choice. Maybe it was the choice anyway, but trying to avoid having those realizations once we've invested a lot of time.
Yeah.
And also kind of just, I don't know if it's sunk cost fallacy, but basically like once we're in the system and we're using it day in day out for operations, like I don't think we're going to move away from it super quickly. Mm-hmm. So he just built it out. I was like, could we do this with it? Like, could we scan a Kanban and it would add to a list of things we had to order, and then we could click order and it would take all of the things that have been compiled from that day or that week or whatever, and it would submit an order. So it would email or it would, whatever we want to do, and then it creates a new record of that order. Mm. And so that would essentially be our PO. Uh-huh. And I don't know that the way he built it is the way we will end up building it, because with everything, there's like 5 ways to do one thing. But just seeing the fact that it was doable means like, that was reassuring. And then like adding QR codes that take you to that specific record, adding QR codes that take you to the website, all that stuff. I
think also like a big hurdle with a lot of those systems is just getting to something you can interact with. Yeah. And so like having something that you can click around in and modify is often a much faster way to learn than trying to start from scratch.
That's probably true. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. I was actually planning on rebuilding it from scratch so that there wasn't any of that, like, I don't know what I can't touch because I don't really understand how it's built kind of thing.
That's fine. But I just meant when you first learn.
That's true. Right. Being able to actually see it function and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to make a tweak. Right. And then I'm going to make another tweak. And, now I understand why this has to flow differently.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I made a setup template for our lathe. So initially, the setup sheet template that I made was only for the mill process. Okay. Lathes are different just because they are. Mm-hmm. They tend to be a lot simpler setup notes. So initially, I was like, I don't know if I need this. But yesterday, we're doing like 10 different single piece, like single quantity lathe parts this week.
Yikes.
And I was like, oh, this is a lot of writing notes. And I did forget some stuff. We almost destroyed our chucking ring yesterday, which is it's like a ring with a halt. It's like a ring that engages the bolt holes on the chuck, so you can clamp on it, but you can bore out through the middle for a soft jaw.
Oh.
I just didn't think about the fact that ring has an ID that is a certain size, obviously. In my head, I was like, oh, it's just big. You don't really have to think about it. And I was running some errands, and Ariel texted me. She's like, it didn't crash and it didn't break the bar, but it was about to run into that ring. So I was like, oh, I need to make this template needs to have a spot where we talk about how big the soft jaw like cavity is going to be in diameter and how deep, so that they can adjust the boring bar stick out for that operation.
Oh, wow.
Like the kind of things, it's so funny how the things that are often challenging have nothing to do with the making of the actual part. Like we've talked about many times, right? It's like,
yeah.
Like we don't very often run into an issue where we totally mess up on the machining of a part. Like almost all of our mistakes are like setup issues, or cutting a soft jaw and not remembering that like it goes this deep and you can't clamp on a parallel, or whatever the case may be.
Right. It's funny. I think part of it is like viewing cutting a soft jaw as sort of this like incidental process, instead of like, we do this every single day for every single part. Let's document it. Let's treat it as though we are making a part, because we are making a part. It's funny. I mean, I just talked about this last week, like making soft jaws as a part that our shop produces, instead of as like this, like, oh no, we have to make another soft jaw. How did we do that again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost crashed our machine yesterday by having a tool break detect in the middle of, and then going back to the same tool, which I kind of want to fix.
And apparently
there's got to be a way to fix it.
Shout out to Ed at High Fly CNC.
Yeah.
I believe the post that he has been sharing around restarts a spindle after a tool break detect.
Oh, nice.
If it's not before a G100. That's what happened?
It didn't restart the spindle, and it didn't go back to our work offset that we were working off of. It was stuck in G53. I'm guessing, because I was like, that shouldn't go there, and the spindle should be running.
Yeah.
I just slowed it all down to see what it would do, because
Yeah.
I was kind of curious, and it was not correct. Anyway, so
process. It's not process reliability. We were talking about this last week.
It's like mistake proofing almost.
It's like dependability. Like, how do I say this? Because process reliability, you think of something that happens every time.
Okay.
Maybe this is just me thinking through this out loud right now, and maybe it is just process
Welcome
reliability.
Welcome to our podcast.
But I think there should be sort of a different term for like knowing that when you're going to need a like ancillary function, sort of, it's going to dependably work. I guess that is just process reliability, but somehow it feels different than being like every time I make, I machine these parts, 600 of them a day or whatever.
I sort of know what you mean. I think it is process reliability, but it does seem like a worthwhile subcategory to think about, which is sort of like, how robust is it?
Yeah. Kind
of like the whole thing. Like if I do something weird, is it going to explode, or does it also function, or at least say like, hey, I'm not going to work doing this. Yeah. Speaking of which, I reached out to Greg, who connected me with an apps guy, about turning off op skip on the CNC in the program at the end. So you could have a toggle in your post that says like, do you want to turn off op skip?
Op skip? You mean block skip?
Like optional like
stop.
The backslash
block skip.
Is that block skip?
Yeah.
The backslash skip?
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, so it skips part of your program. I think there's a common issue where you forget to turn it off.
Oh, yeah.
And so this, you could just have it automatically turn off at the end of your program, so it would fail safe, right? It would fail to not skip parts of your program.
Oh, I like that.
Which he said there would be small modifications in the ladder logic.
Yeah.
But that seems like that would be super useful.
That does. Because
I just keep my hand on it until I'm done with it, because if it's so common where people forget to turn it back off and then crash their machine.
What do you use it for?
I use it for, we probe our flip station at the beginning of every cycle. And if you're repeating a job, like I just ran that part, I don't need to recheck the flip station, so I can just skip it. And that's especially relevant when you're proving out new, like I've been updating a lot of our programs. And so every time I post it, I need to rerun it to make sure it's working. And so, it starts by going to the flip station, getting the probe out, going and touching off to make sure it was adjusted correctly. So I just added a thing to skip all that.
Interesting.
But then I don't want to leave it on because then we'll skip it for all of our parts and it defeats the mistake proofing.
Interesting. This is sort of a tangent, but I've just been thinking a lot about your phrase that you use often, the optimize for learning.
Yeah. I don't know if it's my phrase, but
you use it. And the general concept of like making these small incremental improvements that you can test and check whether they worked in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
And so my daughter is 3.5 going on 4. We recently went on a vacation, sort of family reunion, to Colorado. So we flew.
Okay.
She came back enamored with rolling luggage. Like absolutely enamored.
That's so funny.
And so the other day she has this like bag with a handle on it. She had like stuffed it full of clothes and like stuffed animals. She likes to pretend to pack for trips. And she was dragging it around and she was like, if we put wheels on this, it could be rolling luggage. And I was like, cool, should we do that? And she was like, yeah, let's do that. And I was like, okay, what should we use for wheels? And I just found myself like, there was this temptation to be like, this is how we'll do it.
Right.
Like get you to the end where you can be satisfied with your fancy new rolling luggage. And instead I found myself being like, okay, so this is actually a really cool opportunity for her to like test a bunch of stuff. So I was like, what do you think we could do? She's like, well, we could use this yarn and tie this onto it. And I was like, 100% not going to work, but all right, let's give it a shot. So it was like, that's cool. We did it. It didn't work predictably. And then I was like, okay, so those wheels just kind of flopped. How do you think we should do this? And she's like, well, we could add this thing to it. And I was like, okay, tomorrow let's do that. So like we came after work the next day, we got home and we like glued what we'd used for wheels was like ball jar canning lids.
Oh, nice.
But just the lid. Not the screw on part. Right. And she was like convinced that if we put the screw on part, then it would stay upright because it has like a little thing.
Solid logic in some ways.
So we came home. She like, she didn't untie them first. So
okay.
That's not that this would have made a difference either, but she like glued it all together with the string going through.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, this will be an ongoing project, I believe, for quite some time.
That's awesome.
But it was just cool to take a break and like take myself out of work for a moment and be like, there is so much potential for like learning and kind of creating these thought patterns and like ways of approaching things in a way that like I often don't give myself an opportunity to do. Right. And like most people don't give their children an opportunity to do.
I think my dad did a very good job of doing that and making it feel like I was the one who completed the job or the thing successfully. And the successfully part I think is also important, where like I think he did a good job gauging like how much frustration I could tolerate. Yeah. And then like getting me there. Yeah. Quickly enough, you know.
I think this will be an ongoing process for me of like determining what her staying power is.
Exactly. And then be like, all right, you're ready to just have this thing done. Here's a solution that'll work. And then it's like, it sort of rewards the whole process of like.
Yeah. And I think this can be applied a little bit to a workplace as well.
Oh, 100%.
Like, don't expect your people to like just suffer through a process if you maybe know the answer and they're clearly just frustrated.
Right.
But also don't just fix it for them. I would say
back to the like, how do you build a lean culture, which was another big focus of my conversation with Alec. He has a very different perspective, namely because he has
30-year employees.
Yeah, who know what they're doing and do it a particular way. And so I've seen big turning points for people when I've given them time, like every single day, to improve something. And I think for the first few months, that was pretty aimless, pretty small improvements that they were kind of like not that excited about, / they're like, that's what I'm meant to do. I guess I'll do something.
Yeah.
Labeling stuff, whatever. And then they find a thing that's like genuinely frustrating to them every single day. And then they improve it and they're like, oh yeah, hell yeah. Like this is awesome. So that's when I've seen things really get serious now. Let's see. So yeah, cleaning for inspection or cleaning as inspection. This is the idea with deep cleaning, as we've discussed on the podcast. Those super, super clean manufacturing facilities, it is absolutely not the point. The point is to be able to see when things are out of the ordinary, when stuff's happening that might lead to a breakdown. As you diminish your buffers, as you have less inventory, down machines and stuff really cause serious problems, financial problems, in fact. So I think it's interesting. So anyway, I wiped all the hoses on the back of the CNC. I just saw they were dusty, so I got in there, and once I started wiping, I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity to like inspect all of our pneumatics, all of the coolant. We've had issues with like coolant hoses wearing and stuff like that. So just got back there. I mean, it took me 5-10 minutes and just had a good look around, wiped everything down. It was great. The downtime thing reminds me of, I forget again which book this is, but basically I think it's Toyota Way. Toyota encourages people to stop the line with very specific criteria that I think a lot of people sort of overlook. When I know I did when I first read about it. I was like, oh, everyone just stops the line on a dime, like whenever anything is out of the ordinary. And that's not really how it works, but they do stop the line a lot, like multiple times a day on a new line. And if there are no line stops, the people running the line sort of get chastised, because you can either solve your problems or cover your problems. And if you're not having problems, it just means you're covering them up. And so interestingly, in a traditional car manufacturer, or historically, only the head of the line could stop the line, and the workers were not allowed to stop the line. In Toyota, they encourage everyone to stop the line if there are issues. And the result is higher over not even that long a time. Higher production quality, so just fewer defects coming off the line, and much more uptime on the line. I'm forgetting the exact numbers, but I think they're in like 95% runtime or uptime. And most companies try to never shut the line down and are at like, I forget, like 85 or something. So it's sort of, again, one of those contradictions of like stopping production more to solve problems results in fewer stoppages. So cleaning for inspection.
I am out.
I have one more. I have 2 mixing containers for our paint. A smaller one and a bigger one. The bigger one has more surface area, sort of inherent in it being bigger, so it wastes more paint. So I try to mix everything in the smaller one when possible. And I could never, I've been doing this for 2 years, going on 3. And I basically add up how much of a particular color I need, and then I mix it. And only now have I written how many grams of paint fit in the small container. And every time I would sort of look at it and be like, I forget if it was like 120 or like 130. I bet this will fit. And then like every now and then it wouldn't fit, and I'd have to pour it into the other container. And then like all the paint that's stuck to the inside of the small container is wasted. There's wasted time. There's over processing, wasted motion, basically every waste in the book.
Classic.
Anyway, so I just wrote on a piece of tape this many grams max on the thing. I mention this because it is amazing how many small things like this we cope with every single day and never correct them. And they seem small, and they're not going to go viral on Instagram or YouTube, where all your machinist buddies send you the thing of the guy who wrote, 120 gram max on a sticker and stuck it to a piece of foam. It's just not that sexy, but it is really impactful.
Yeah.
In two ways I've found. One is immediate time savings and preventing whatever, like mistakes, pouring paint into a thing it doesn't fit into, whatever. The second is freeing up mental load, which I feel like we hit on it for a few episodes months back, but it's so real. It's really so noticeable when you're doing a bunch of random trash in your head of like really important stuff you have to keep track of.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned this last week, moving the scale over to the computer so I didn't have to remember all the numbers going back and forth. I could just stand there and read them off the screen and do it all.
I've been finding that huge with this template thing. It's like I was spending so much of my brain.
Am I missing anything?
Remembering what I was supposed to write down, not actually focusing on not focusing on the content, being like, did I hit this? Did I hit that? Did I hit this? Now it's just like, what is that? It's this. What is that? It's this. And it's a lot, it's less error prone and it's faster. And I'm down for another one 5 minutes later instead of being like, I gotta do that again.
And you've built yourself a baseline that can be improved, because now when you make a mistake, you're like, update the template, bam, done. And it persists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Anyway, those small, really boring, not sexy improvements.
It is funny that like so much can be done with like tape, a Sharpie, and like the Notepad app on your laptop.
100%. Our biggest, I think about this sometimes. I feel like most of our huge improvements, the spindle gripper being the exception probably, where that was very impactful to the business, has been like color coding and making taking Kaizen foam and like putting all the parts in one place, writing a piece of paper, a Sharpie, some colored tape. It took our training, like our onboarding time for our last employee. The previous one was about 3 weeks till they were running parts on their own. And then this, he was like 3 days.
Wow.
So and it was just like, where all the parts are for the setup. There's no like, oh, right, that one we keep over here. Oh, yeah, that has a different screw, and we keep the driver for that screw in this drawer that you'd never know about.
Yeah.
We're starting to run into that with Kanban, where I'm seeing the writing on the wall. Like all the Kanban doesn't tell you where the thing is stocked, where to put it, where it came from, any of that.
Yeah.
Because I know I created them all.
Yeah.
But as we encounter Kanbans that are really infrequent, things like the grease for the CNC.
Yeah.
And then it comes in the mail and Sam's like, I don't know where this goes. So,
I do
something
think
to tackle.
Yeah, that's one place where a Kanban template would be so impactful without even trying to autofill everything out of
that's a good point.
The computer right now.
I think, I think it's just like, it's a huge step to go to a Kanban system from not having one. And I did look at templates and I downloaded some, and I just don't fill them all the way in because it's like, it's more work. It's more to think about. And then in terms of like systemization sort of building on itself, we didn't have very good organization of where those things were stocked. So how am I going to describe like, oh yeah, it's on this like jumbled pile of junk, like at the back of this one shelf.
Look in the green milk crate.
Right, exactly. Like that's honestly like we still have areas of the shop that are like that.
Yeah.
So there's not like, we are finally to a point where we have enough organized shelving that, one of the conversations is like, let's make one of these shelving units just for restocked items. And then we can call out like this shelving unit, shelf 3, bay 4, or whatever the thing is. And you can go like, yep, there it is. Bam.
Yeah.
But until there's some stability, or until there's, in that system of like, where does it live?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it should be floating around somewhere on this workbench or that workbench or the other workbench. Like that's the tool you need. And you're like,
excuse me. But now you are getting to that point where you need that additional information. So it's time to update.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So many improvements,
I guess. So many more to do.
So many more.
Thanks all for listening.
Yes, indeed.
Check out our Patreon. Link is in the description.
You can find us on the Instagrams at incrementalci. You can find me at lichen_MFG and likenprecision.com on the internet.
And you can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com on the World Wide Web.
We will see you soon.